Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Tuesday. It's September 29th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And this was an interesting day. It looked like we were going to have a range day, but really we had two measured legs down here, and then prices reversed. Um, we didn't get back in. Well, we did get back inside, but we didn't stay inside, so we're still trending down here. So it was an interesting day. But here's your first leg down. That's a pretty strong leg down. Doesn't mean that it can't be a range day, but once it starts going lower, if we don't go all the way back to the highs and we start down, then you want to look for a measured leg. And if you measure that leg, and you can see we basically made a little double bottom and then broke just a tad lower and trapped some people and then rallied from there. So two perfect measured leg correction there. And that's kind of what you would expect if we went lower here. So the big problem here is we spend a lot of time in these tight ranges. We drop down and just go sideways, and it gets hard to trade that stuff. So late this afternoon, there really wasn't a good trade all the way up here. My signal bars, I mean, hopefully most of you's chart probably looks like mine now with the way we're doing it, but if you got some better signal bars, you might have got a few extra trade because there's some good setups there. Just really weak signal bars. But I'm going to back way out here and we'll talk about the trades and we'll go from there. But of course, early on, we're looking at a range here. And the thing is, you've got three ranges within. You got the big range, and this is the overnight lows. Then you got the brown range that we were kind of in. But within that, there's this blue range too. So when you don't get consistent lows each time, really the most consistent lows were across this blue here, and we had a couple of failed breakouts, and then most of it, the highs were across here with a couple of failed breakouts. So it depends on how you were looking at it. Early on, I was looking at the brown one, but as we got more price action here, it became obvious that, hey, we're probably inside this real tight blue one as well. But anyway, let's talk about the trade. 7 o'clock came right down through this. Prices are moving down, and then they bounce. And we just kind of bounce right into the middle of this move here. So you'd expect another leg down. So you're really looking. I mean, it's clear that there's a little spike in channel, and that's the first break. So you would expect prices to try to go lower here, especially with overnight lows being here. And if we get a measured move, it's probably going to put you down here real close to this. I didn't measure that particular one, but let's just measure it and see. If you measure that, it puts you right down here at the overnight lows, as you can see. And we came up short there. We tried to go lower a couple more times, just couldn't do it. But anyway, you're still expecting you're still expecting a short there. And the reason this one's green, I mean, it is a lower high. Notice we come up and we get a first entry and then we turned up. And so there's a second entry short there. That is a little bit congestive. But this breaks higher and turns down all in one bar, so it's probably going to trap some people. And you can see it does snap back, but it continues lower. And if you drew this little trend line here, you can see that prices are respecting that as well, kind of working down here. But it's still congestive, so that's the reason it's a little bit aggressive. So that's the reason I marked it as such. But it's a lower high, and you are looking for prices to go lower. And I would expect prices to try to make a measured leg down there. But then we bounce here, and notice what we do. We make a first entry, and then we run up here through the EMA and make a second entry. And so at this point, you got a little failure there in the trap. So if we break higher, we're probably going to run on up. And you got enough room there. So again, it's a little aggressive. You got 3 or 4 bars stacked up there. This one's got a small body. I wouldn't, generally you want to see something that looks more like this or like a doji or with a like this. But that still looks a little congestive. 4 bars stacked side by side. So, of course, when you see this, you only have 3 and there's no congestion. So, and it is off this little spike in channel trend line. It is a failed second entry short. You do have enough room to get out. So there's several reasons I like that. Let me move this just so you can kind of see it. If you move that all the way over, At that point, that's not necessarily congestion. So, and it's good for a scalp, nothing more. But I still marked it green because I think it's a little bit aggressive. So, because we're just kind of right in the middle of the EMA's flat here. But there's reason to like that trade. It fits our criteria. It's just kind of aggressive. So then we turn down, we come down here, we make a new low, and you would hope you get a higher low here, but you don't. It runs up and you turn down, and that's the first break of that trend line. So prices are probably going to try to go higher here, but when they break higher and fail instantly and turn down, you probably want to go short one tick below that because we're probably heading back down to the low side. And of course, it bounces at this higher point here. And it bounces a few times, but you just don't get along there. You never look how congestive that looks, and that's a fairly big. That's almost the whole range, and there's just no good signal bar to go long. And you definitely don't want to go short down here. That one would have worked on a lower high right there, a little double top, but you don't want to go short right into that because it could bounce just like this one or this one did. It goes on through, but you can see it closed inside, and that's why you just can't go short there. And unfortunately, you don't get along. So we run back up here, and then we just start kind of going sideways, and finally you make a higher high with a lower high right here and a nice signal bar, and it's pretty much back inside the brown trend line. And so I like that one. We should run to the other side, at least back down to here, maybe to here, but it ends up going all the way down to the overnight lows. So if you caught that one move, that was the move of the day, really. And then we just kind of go sideways. It drops lower. And that's tempting right there, that far away from the EMA. But you can see we're still inside this channel, and so it's just really aggressive to go long there. You get a higher low here, but you got to go long. It actually breaks lower, and you got to go long right into that trend line. We're still a long way away from the EMA, so you expect prices to maybe go back up there, and you would expect two legs as well. And you see we got two legs before we turn down there. So that's another one you could argue that possibly to be green. I think you're better off to skip it. But as I said, there's some reasons to consider it right there. Because this might be a failed break out of the trading range as well. So that's another thing to think about. But notice we just turn down right there. And we make a lower high, and then we make another lower high. So there's a failed second entry long there. It's a double test. Plus, there's the brown trend line, and it's a little double test there of that price level, the EMA. There's several different reasons. This actually breaks higher and turns down. So I like that one. At this point, we are going sideways there. But you would expect prices. That's a pretty strong trend down, so you would expect prices to try to make this new low, and it probably does trap people there as well. So it spooked me a little bit on when it came back right there, but you can see it suddenly drops and turns into a good trade. And then of course you get two legs back to the trend line again. Nice bearish bar. And then we bounce here, but I think we're still inside that brown trend line. We're still underneath the midline of the two-tiered blue channel. Of course, we could be headed back over to here, but you'd probably, and you could consider that a higher low from here, but there's just not much room there. And so I think you're better off to skip it. And then, of course, we find resistance here. And again, you want to wait on a lower high. This is a second entry right at that resistance across there. And you're a little ways away from the EMA. That one's very tempting, and it would have worked. But I think you need to wait on this lower high, and you see you don't get a signal bar there, unfortunately. And I don't think you want to go long right here. We just came off the highs, even though it turns up. But you get that failed breakout, and that is a second entry short. First entry, second entry. And that is a new swing low because that one's lower than that one. So it is a second entry short, and it looks like two legs up. It's a failed breakout. I marked it green because you're better off to wait on the lower high, but you don't get one here. It just, again, that's the next really good move off this thing. But there was some, I mean, you may or may not have had this blue channel. And let me show you, if you just drew it off these first two swings and then drug it up to the highs, you don't have any confirmation of it, but look how this midline, you can see it comes into play there, here, all the way down through here. And that's not a whole lot of confirmation, but that's some confirmation that it looks correct. And later on, you get a whole lot more down through here. So there's some, there's some clues early on that there may be a trend line there. And so that's another reason you might take that one on that second entry with that big signal bar. I marked it green because most of your newer traders are not going to probably see that level of detail in the price action. You need to be a little more skilled probably to notice that and to be able to find that channel. But it is a failed break out of this. But and the trend and the overall trend is down, and we're looking at this point for that measured move, which is still way on down here. So we got a long way to go, and you got plenty of room in your little range here too. So there's reasons to really like that one. Unfortunately, you don't get the lower high till here. You can't go short way down here. Not a good signal bar either. And then we come back, and you get a big bearish bar right here, but this is kind of it's just a first entry. You can see the little trend channel working up there, and that's the first break. So we're probably going to try to come back up, but when it makes this lower high, it gives you that big bearish bar. I like going short there. And your hope is it's going to run on down to the low side. It doesn't. It's this quick, easy scalp because people are probably trying to get long there. And you can tell by how fast that bar moved down and how bearish it is that it caught a lot of people off guard and they had to exit. And then we're just kind of working sideways here back to the trend line. No setups here. You could argue there's a second entry short right there. But the fact that we're coming up short down here and that we've already got a break, you need to let this trend line play out. And notice we get a break and two little swings to a new high, and then it turns down. So that would have been the better place, and even better would be to wait on a lower high. But again, that signal bar is not very good. The only thing I will say is there's only 4 ticks in that bar. And there's a good chance we're coming back to the EMA. So for that reason, that's another one you probably could argue to be green. Because you do have your break, 2 legs up to a new high, but sometimes it'll break lower and push up one more time, and but you do see the 3 pushes already, and generally you're not going to see more than 3 pushes up. You'll see 2 most of the time. Sometimes you'll see 3. Very rarely will you see more than that. But it does happen still, so you got to be aware of that. But you can see how far we are away from the EMA, and when we've been this close, all that tightness, we're going to come back probably. This thing, and of course that's the first break of this blue trend line, which really never got confirmed on the trend line itself, but I think you have enough evidence to see it's valid still. And so prices run all the way down here and make a new low, and that's what you would expect them to do, and they reverse instantly. And I marked this one too because this was your measured move, this blue line. If you come back over here, you can see we had met that to the tick, and and then broke lower. And this actually breaks lower and reverses and goes out the other side. You know we're probably coming back to the EMA, and you've already had your close outside here and a new low. And you've had your close outside the big one and a new low. So we're probably going to come back to the EMA at a very minimum. And I like these because a lot of times you catch an important low, or if it's on the upper side, you catch an important high. And if you catch that trade, you got that whole move up there, at least to here, before you had any correction of any magnitude. And so that's a great move to catch. It's aggressive. You get a higher low here, but even it is aggressive. It's not a true reversal, but prices push through. Look how easy they push through the EMA. They pull back, they test it, and if you draw this trend line off the highs, it's right at that trend line. And so if we break higher here, we're probably going to make a second leg up, and you can see the 2 legs up, and we even made another leg up. That's a strong move right there. And so, but both of those are aggressive trades. You'll see there's a lot of green ones. I mean, really from 11 o'clock on today, there just wasn't much. There's some great setups right here, but the signal bars are terrible. So anyway, we run up here and we come back. Notice that little channel working down. You get a break, new low, and I would draw my trend line right across that. And we get the higher low that you would want to get here, and the signal bar is no good. Again, that's a very small bar. 7 ticks, I mean, normally that's a average size bar, but right now that's a small bar, but it's just too bearish. I can't even justify making that uh, green. And we run up, and we just kind of start working sideways. Now, somebody will probably got trapped right here. They'll say, well, there's a failed second entry short right there. Well, it is, but look how far away you are from the EMA. You want it to set up off this EMA on a failure. And of course, it is off the trend line, but it's just we've been too far away from the EMA for too long on day when we really hugged the EMA most of the day. So, and of course, that takes you in the 2 o'clock hour. And you don't want to go short here. That's the first break of this trend line. So you're still really looking for prices to try to make a retest of the high. And this channel takes you down into the 2 o'clock hour. So just not a lot of trades today. There's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I still count 5 that are red. And there's a couple more in there you could argue for to be aggressive. So all you need is 2 or 3. So even though we had a good move down today, it just was not just not a lot of trades there. There's a lot of sideways action, and this is where you'll get chopped to pieces. If you're not careful of what you're doing and reading this perfectly, you'll get chopped to pieces, especially in the middle. Of course, right here, I wouldn't have called this sideways yet. It's starting to look sideways, but we're still making lower lows and lower highs, and you can clearly see that trend line into play. So if you're thinking this being in the middle of the range, at that point, I don't really think it was. I think you could move this at that point and not necessarily have it in there. And you can see, because we're still in this downtrend, and the measured move is way on down here. And you can clearly see that little spiking channel down in play, and then we get the break. And even when we make that first leg down, we kind of get back inside that brown channel before we break out. So yeah, I didn't really draw this until we bounced here a couple more times and then made that low right there. So I don't think you would classify this as a range just yet. And so that's what I saw today. Not the best trading day, but we've had worse. You just had to be real patient today. And that's where I see most people making their mistakes. They're just not patient. They see something that looks close and they haven't had a trade and they can't wait. They just jump in. And you can see you had to be real patient today because there was quite a bit of movement between trades. Like here's this last one right around 11. And then we really don't have another red or blue one. Now we have a couple more aggressive ones, but you had to wait from 11 to noon just for that. And then it's aggressive. And then you had to wait from noon to another 17 or 18 minutes before you had this one. Actually, let me just see what time that is. That one is at, yeah, about another 18, almost 20 minutes probably. And then you had to wait again, and then you're sitting there waiting till 2 o'clock and you don't get anything. I mean, it's a shame that we didn't get something right here, but sometimes it works out like that, and you just have to, go with it. So there's one other thing that you might argue here is that this is a little double bottom. You could argue this is a double bottom. That's close enough. So you might look at that as 2 legs up that fail. Notice there's 2 legs up there, and it fails. But you're just pushing it. But it does confirm that key entry point. And you can see it rocketed up pretty quickly because I guarantee you the shorts were piling up here because they weren't paying attention. That we're in an uptrend and everything's still above the EMA. And that's the first look, when you've been that far away from the EMA and you come back and you bounce off of it, you're going to probably push on up again. So just remember that. But anyway, that's 20 minutes worth, and that pretty much covers everything today. Just remember these measured moves, because that comes in handy. That helps keep you in any runners you get here. I mean, if you could catch that trade right there, that's a great setup. You would hope you'd get a lower high, but sometimes you don't. And if you weren't trying to be a little aggressive, you just didn't get to enter there. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it works. So, smart traders are probably all piling on right there. And when that turns down, it's pretty obvious with this trading down into this, you're probably going to end up going out the other side, the short side. And plus you got your measured move out the short side. And so the smart traders, when they saw that failed breakout, especially notice you got the little trend working up, you get a break, move to a new high, and then you would expect it to go down. Of course, the safer thing is to wait for a lower high, but sometimes you don't get it, and that's what happened here. But the smart traders, a lot of them are going to be aggressive and take that trade, and you can see that. And you can see all the ones that were piling up long down here realize, oh no, and they run, and look at it go. They run for the door, and that's what happens. They're all loading up long under here thinking it's going to be a failed breakout. And you don't really see any rejection down here. Rejection looks like this right here. You can clearly see the rejection off the highs right here. Look at prices go. That's rejection. Where prices are just hanging around down there. They're not rocketing out of there. This was rejection up here pretty much. It took it a minute, but once it started going. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.